Well, the DA is James Selfe, joins us now to talk about some of the issues that the party has raised with regards to the processes involved in how the elections have unfolded so far. James, thanks very much for coming into studio. We are, of course, still joined by our analyst, Karima Brown, as well. And perhaps let's start here. Is it premature for the DA to already be talking about a full audit of these elections?
Well, there were very many reports of people who managed to vote more than once. In some cases up to 4 times. We don't know how extensive that is. It might be very confined, it might be very widespread. But we feel that the only way in which that could possibly be established reliably is by doing a full audit of all the election results. Now, that comes with certain downsides. We're very alive to those downsides. It would delay the election result. It may lead to instability, it may even lead to violence. And so what we have decided to do is to agree to a sample audit that will enable us to see whether the incidents are confined to particular areas or whether it's more widespread. Obviously, if it's more widespread, we will have to take further action. But what we also hope to do is to bring home to the IEC that they have to put control measures in place to make it impossible for people to go and vote more than once. And the incidence of having indelible ink that one can remove so easily is an unpardonable oversight.
James, the question is, where were your party agents at these voting stations and districts who sign off and say that the results are okay? Did they filter down this information to you while you raising your concerns after they said it was okay?
No. They were able to give us information at the time. We provided real-time objections to the IEC, but it was brought home to us finally towards evening last night when one of our own members, just to illustrate how easy it was to do this, went and got a second set of ballot papers from another voting station, having already voted. Now, I mean, that ought never to happen, and it has to do with the fact that the zip machines were not operational. There were too few of them. There were no VEC4 forms at the voting station, and people were just allowed to wander.
Were there too few when already, right now, 6.69 million people have been counted and verified? It looks like the majority of South Africans were able to actually go to a voting station and vote.
Yes.
So how do you say that there were too few when clearly people did manage to get there?
Well, my point is that when you run out of VEC4 forms, you start taking shortcuts, and that's when it is possible for people to vote more than once. And it may be that amongst the 6.6 million people whose votes have already been counted are people who voted more than once.
James, here's a question for you, and this is something that's coming up on social media time and time again, just in response to the DA calling for a full national audit of these elections. Would the party be doing so if it wasn't already clear, even though not all of the votes have been counted, that the DA is losing massive support in many provinces?
Well, put it this way, you have to pass the test of materiality. In other words, is the action that you're taking going to make a material difference? Well, it might not nationally, but it might very well provincially, and certainly in the Western Cape, certainly in the city of Gauteng, in the province of Gauteng.
So it looks like you're posturing as the DA, deflecting and misleading the public about the legitimacy of this vote because you are losing ground, especially to the freedom of press.
That's an imputation that you're putting into my mouth.
Well, we have analysts, we have experts who are saying it. Karima Brown is one of the people raising questions about why you're raising such serious concern about the election when only 6 objections have been raised, and overall, more than 90% of it has gone through
Every
smoothly.
single political party represented on the floor here can tell you stories of people who double voted. Every single political party. And I invite you to go and come up So invite them here and they will tell their own
Shahan,
story.
can I come in
Yeah.
here? Mr. Selfe, why don't you take these examples of fraud to the police and lay criminal charges against these individuals? And more importantly, because you've had party agents giving you information in real time, you could have actually stopped it from happening. So people didn't have to vote twice. So when they saw someone voting twice, they could have stopped it from happening, because that is why you have your party agent there, to protect your interests. What is strange to me is that there were other problems that were also making it difficult for people to vote. For example, 16 tents in the Eastern Cape basically blown away by the wind. I don't hear the DA complaining about that. I don't hear the DA complaining about 6 voting stations in KwaZulu-Natal not actually opening at all, and people arriving from 4 a.m. in the morning, which brings us back to the fact that the objections that you raise may well be factual, but they are driven by the fact that your support is being eaten by the Freedom Front Plus. And of course, we all knew that once you break through that racial ceiling in the Democratic Alliance, where you have to go for the black African vote, you were going to lose white support, because you consolidated your position as the largest opposition party by actually consolidating minorities. And Musi Maimani's leadership has put off a lot of whites from the Democratic Alliance. In the Western Cape, if you look at what Good is doing, for example, what the ACDP is doing, and even what the ANC is doing, that did so terribly against you in the municipal elections in places like Boerkamp and so on, you are in serious danger of losing votes to parties that have been able to seize on the fact that you didn't actually have a proper identity. I mean, your head of policy resigned months before the election started, and of course we were unclear about what exactly it is the DA was standing for.
Can we give James Selfe a chance to respond? And there are a number of questions being asked there. I suppose let's start off with the various other issues that have also come up, the tents that were blown over,
They were all
etc.
reported. We reported more than 600 different issues in the course of yesterday, including the ballots, the voting stations that never opened, including large-scale intimidation that happened, including the shortage of ballot papers. This is just one of many complaints that we raised during the course of the day that were passed on by local agents and escalated up here to the national.
But Mr. Selfe, why didn't your party agents stop people from voting twice when they saw it happening?
If somebody arrives without a mark on their finger and the presiding officer allows that person to vote, how is the party agent supposed to know the person's voted already?
So then how are we able to trust what you're saying?
Well, because the police has already made 20 arrests in KwaZulu-Natal.
No, but the reality is that if you are saying your party agent couldn't figure out whether people were voting twice, how do you know for a fact that people were voting twice? And more importantly, why, for example, could the DA members also not vote twice? I mean, the suggestion here is that particular parties could vote twice, but the reality is if there is a glitch in the system, it means that anybody from any party could vote twice, and that is of course a much bigger issue. What I want to understand is the role of the party agents is to protect the positions of the parties. If you see anything irregular, like for example the woman who saw the IEC chair fawn over Cyril Ramaphosa, all they had to go was to the presiding officer and say this is not allowed, and then it has to stop. That is exactly the role of the party agent. So you could have, for example, gone with actual names to the police last night already and saying these people double voted, these people committed fraud, and the IEC allowed it to happen, but our party agents actually stopped it. And if you're saying the party agent couldn't pick it up, then how are you extrapolating that this is happening on such a broad scale that you now need a sample audit?
We don't know on what scale. What we do know is that fraud occurred in certain voting districts. We want to know what was the extent of that fraud.
I think that's legitimate, but what I'm trying to say here, Mr. Selfe, is that your party agents were aware that things were going wrong. What did they do to stop it? Because that's their responsibility. That's why they're in the voting booth. That's why they're allowed. And then secondly, more importantly, is why did you not, for example, go to the police with actual information? Because what the IEC said during their press conference was that they are going to upgrade the zip machine, so they will be able to see whether barcodes appear twice, and whether, of course, also, let's say person X voted 4 times, they will be able to pick that person up in the different areas, and those people can, of course, be prosecuted.
Let's give you a chance to comment too.
Well, I'm delighted that the IEC is now taking action. They should have taken action yesterday and before, because in many cases the very issues that we reported to them yesterday, we'd raised beforehand at the National Party Liaison Committee. So, for example, at 10 o'clock in the morning at some voting stations, the ballot papers ran out. Now, it is inconceivable because we were given the assurance that at very least every voting station would have at least the number of ballots of registered voters in that voting station. Yet voting stations in the city of Cape Town ran out of ballot papers at 10 o'clock in the morning after 3 hours. Now, I didn't interrupt you. Please don't interrupt me.
No, Mr. Selfe, the point is that ballot papers could get to the
Let's give each other a fair chance to respond to the issues
to the
here.
stations, but the police were not ready to accompany it. The ballot papers can't travel by themselves.
Complete your thought.
My answer is, we of course then reported that. On one voting station in the city of Cape Town, they ran out 3 times of ballot papers. In one ward in the city of Cape Town, the entire ward ran out of voters. Now, I mean, that speaks to bad planning, bad anticipation, bad management. And all I'm saying is that the IEC needs to take a hard look at the way that they run elections in South Africa, learn from these events, and take the necessary precautionary steps.
Do you need to take a long look at how your party agents actually act at those voting stations?
Well, as I keep saying, in this particular case of double voting, there is absolutely no way that an inside agent would know that a voter was voting twice, because they've got no mark on their fingers.
Very quickly, we have to end this conversation because we have to go to our reporters across the country, Mr. Selfe. The other point Karima raises about your supporters moving over to the FF Plus because of Musi Maimane being in charge, a more diverse democratic alliance. What does that say about your support base?
Well, we want to become a party for all South Africans, and in the process, there are some people who take comfort in being in exclusive nationalist organizations or even religious organizations, and that is a choice that they make. We respect that choice. What we want to do is we want to be to live out a vision of one South Africa for all, which means that we're not a party for whites or Afrikaners, we're not a party for coloureds or Indians, we're a party for all South Africans.
And does that sort of regeneration of the DA, is it clear to you now that it's going to cost you votes?
Well, it may cost us votes on one side of the equation, it may gain us votes on the other. It's a calculation we have to make, but it's an enterprise that is worth pursuing for the sake of South Africa.
All right, well, thanks very much to you both for chatting to us this afternoon. Our political analyst, Karima Brown, is here with us at the Results Operations Centre. That's the DA's Federal Council Chairperson, James Selfe, talking to us about various issues being raised by the party, including the possibility of a full national audit of the